Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking everything DC Dual Force. I'm extremely excited for this game, so I want to share my knowledge that I have on the game so far in terms of the resource system, how you play cards, different keywords, etc. So yeah, let's jump straight into it, guys. So there are three different types of cards within this game, guys. You have leader cards, recruit cards, and action cards. Leader cards have a certain amount of health, and they also have an ability attached with them with a charge effect. I'm going to get into the charge a little bit later. Recruit cards have a resource value attached to them. That means that you have to pay a certain resource in order to play this card. They also have an attack value and a health value associated with them, and they usually have an ability as well. And finally, we have action cards. Action cards are very much like spell cards in other card games. They also have a resource value associated with them, so you do have to pay a resource to play one of these action cards, but they're basically just like a spell card. So you can either target something if it's like a targeting ability, you just play it and it resolves something. So just like a simple spell card, essentially. In order to win a game of DC Dual Force, you must defeat all of your opponent's leaders. So they start off with 2 leaders, but just to note, guys, there are ways in this game to get multiple leaders. So you have to destroy all of your opponent's leaders in order to win the game. So firstly, guys, I want to discuss the resource system within the game. At the start of the game, both players draw 4 cards from their deck, and then they have the option to mulligan their hand. So they can replace all of their cards. They can choose 1 or 2 cards to replace and draw a new card. This is the very same system that Hearthstone has and many other card games. After you mulligan your hand, on turn 1, the player is presented with 1 bronze resource. These resources are how you play cards within DC Dual Force. You also draw a card at the start of each turn. Moving on to turn 2, the player is now presented with 2 bronze resources, so they can now play 2 bronze cards from their hand. If they have a free card in their hand, for example, like this one, they can also play it this turn. You can play as many free cards as you want per turn, but you can only play 2 cards per turn that cost resources, unless you're generating additional resources, which I'll get into a little bit later. Moving on to turn 3, one of your bronze resources is upgraded to a silver resource, and then you still maintain your other 1 bronze resource too. This means you can now play 1 silver resource card from your hand and also a bronze resource card too. Moving on to turn 4, your other bronze resource is now upgraded to a silver resource. This means that you can now play 2 silver resource cards if you wish. If you don't have silver resource cards in your hand and you just still have 2 bronzes, you can still use these 2 silver resources to play your 2 bronze cards. It's not like 2 silver resources equals 1 bronze. They both count as just a single resource, if that makes sense. Moving on to turn 5, one of your silver resources then gets upgraded to a gold resource, which allows you to play gold resource cards from your hand. Now, this is what it stays like for the rest of the game. Your other silver does not get upgraded to another gold. You just maintain 1 gold resource and 1 silver resource for the rest of the game. In terms of resource generation, you can only naturally have 2 resources available, but there are certain card effects that grant you additional resources, such as Blue Devil, 10th Metal, and say, for example, Green Lantern Power Battery. This means you can build some sort of ramp archetype, if that makes sense. So say, for example, your Blue Devil procs and you generate 1 silver resource. Then using that silver resource, you can use 10th Metal, and then you can generate a gold resource super early compared to your opponent. So there's a lot of cool combos that you can do in terms of resource generation. But yeah, you're not limited to just have your 2 if you play certain cards in your deck like these. All right, guys, we're going to move on to keywords now. There's a lot to cover here, so let's jump straight into it. So here we have the Harley Quinn leader, which reads, End Adrenaline draws a card. So Adrenaline essentially means while your hand is empty, this ability is active. So if you have no cards in your hand, Adrenaline will proc, and Harley Quinn will draw you a card. So that's what Adrenaline means. The next keyword we have is Ambush, guys. This keyword reads, if this character KOs a character it attacks, it doesn't take damage back. So the example card here we have is Azrael. Azrael is a silver recruit with Ambush, a 4 attack, 3 health recruit. And essentially, if Azrael destroys one of your opponent's recruits and it attacks it, then it won't take any damage back. So that's what Ambush is. The next keyword we have, guys, is Aura. Aura reads, the next time this character would be affected by an enemy's ability or action, it isn't. So say, for example, my opponent plays a card like Omega Beams, which is a gold resource action card, which reads KO an enemy recruit or destroy an enemy recruit, draw a card. My card with Aura would be unaffected by this card. It would not be destroyed. The next keyword is Deploy. So Deploy is very similar to On Reveal in Marvel Snap or Battle Cry within Hearthstone. It reads, when this card enters the battlefield, activate this ability. Now, just to note, guys, if you summon a card onto the battlefield with a Deploy effect, it will still trigger. It doesn't work by, as in like you have to just play the card. It will still work if the card is like generated onto the board. I'll get into like the summoning keyword a little bit later on in the video. The next keyword is End. This is very straightforward, guys. This essentially means when your turn ends, this ability activates. Super straightforward. The next keyword is Firepower. I'm super excited about this keyword. I think this is really powerful. It reads, your cards and abilities deal additional non-combat damage equal to your total firepower. So the best thing I can kind of compare this to is like spell damage within Hearthstone. and it works on any damage besides combat damage. So say for example, Booster Gold, he has 4 attack. When he attacks, that's just 4 combat damage. But any non-combat damage, so say an action card that deals damage or a card's ability that deals damage, that will be affected by firepower. So this is a super cool keyword. The next keyword we have is evade, guys. Evade reads, the next time this character is attacked, the attack is avoided, so no damage is dealt to the card. Evade is a super cool keyword, but it only works if, say for example, your opponent's leader or your opponent's recruit is actually attacking the card. If there's any non-combat damage that's dealt to a card with evade, the damage will still go through. It only negates damage when it's being attacked. The next keyword we have is flurry, guys. This is a super cool keyword, very, very similar to Wind Fury from Hearthstone. It essentially reads, can attack twice each turn. There's some super cool flurry decks that I've seen that I've been messing around with, so hopefully I get to experiment with some of these decks within the beta this weekend. The next keyword that we have, guys, is guard. Guard reads, your front row characters with guard protect all other friendly characters. So you can kind of compare this to taunt within Hearthstone. So no matter what, any of your opponent's recruits or leaders, they must attack your card with guard first before they can attack anything else. The next keyword that we have is hidden, guys. So hidden reads, can't be the target of enemy attacks, actions, or abilities, and doesn't protect other characters. Hidden is removed at the start of your next turn. So the best thing I can compare this to is like stealth within Hearthstone, except it only lasts for 1 turn. So it is actually a super cool ability, but the fact that it specifically says it doesn't protect other characters. So in DC Dual Force, I'm going to show on the screen now, essentially if you play a recruit in front of your leader or a recruit in front of another recruit, this acts as a protector or a blocker. So say, for example, a card with hidden is in front of a card that you're trying to protect. That doesn't protect it at all. They can still attack that card directly behind the hidden card. So kind of a few kind of niche ways that hidden works really well, but particularly this card, Nightshade, she's a bronze resource card that you can play super early on in the game. I think she's a super powerful card, but yeah, hidden is one of those keywords that you really have to think about card placement because that matters a lot. The next keyword that we have is hunter, guys. Hunter is super cool. It reads, can attack hidden and protected characters. So obviously we just covered the hidden keyword previously. If any card is hidden, cards with hunter can directly attack them, but then also it can attack protected characters. So it can go directly over a card and say, for example, attack your opponent's leader, attack a recruit that's being protected by a card. So I think these cards are going to be super powerful. There's going to be maybe some cool like combo decks that you can do to like negate any protectors or blockers on the board. So yeah, super excited about the hunter keyword. The next keyword we have is invincible, guys. Invincible reads, can't be damaged or KO'd. So essentially it's just like immune in Hearthstone, like nothing can pretty much destroy this. So very simple, very, very cool keyword. The next keyword we have is lethal, guys. Lethal reads, KO any recruit this card damages. Very similar to poison, if any of you guys have played Hearthstone. So they just need to damage a card once and then it gets destroyed. Just to note, this only works on recruit cards unless it's specified that, I don't know, if it says has lethal against leaders, but if it just reads lethal, that's only against recruit cards. The next keyword we have is parting shot. Parting shot reads, when this character is KO'd, activate this ability. But just to note, it does not activate if the character is replaced. I'm going to get into replacing a little bit later in the video, but it's essentially like death rattle. If the card dies, activate the ability of the card. The next keyword we have is shield, guys. Shield reads, the next time this character would be damaged, prevent it. Very comparable to Divine Shield from Hearthstone. Very simple, very useful keyword to have on a card. This next one is super fun, guys. This keyword is speed. Speed reads, can attack on the turn it's deployed. So very much like charge from Hearthstone. There's a lot of cool things that you can do with cards with speed. You can like instantly kill recruits or instantly damage opponent's leaders. So I think speed is a super useful keyword to see in the game. We also have start, guys. Start again is one very simple keyword. It basically just reads, when your turn starts, this ability activates. So the idea with this keyword is you want to kind of play a card on the board and then hope it survives so that you can actually activate the start ability on your next turn. Another keyword that I want to discuss is exhaust, because a lot of cards within DC Dual Force have exhaust within their text description. So cards enter play exhausted. If you play a recruit, it enters the battlefield exhausted, unless they have speed, which we just mentioned, which is like the charge ability. Exhausted cards and exhausted leaders cannot attack. When a ready character attacks, they become exhausted. So once your character is able to attack, after they attack, the card then becomes exhausted again. So kind of like attack sickness in, say, a game like Hearthstone as well, but like a little bit different. But that's essentially what the exhausted keyword means. The next keyword that we have is seek, guys. So seek reads, look at the number of cards, select one, create it, and add it to your hand. If the number of cards is unspecified, the default cards for seek will be 3. So the only exception to this is, I can't think of the name of the card off the top of my head, but I know it's like Batman's one where he generates, it's like seek 4 gadgets. It specifies to actually seek 4 different cards, but if it doesn't specify the number, you will only be presented with 3 cards to choose from. So very similar to the discover effect within Hearthstone, you're presented with 3 cards, you pick 1 card, that gets added to your hand. The next thing I want to talk about is bonus attack. So bonus attack does not exhaust the attacker, and it can be made even if the attacker is already exhausted. So the idea of this card, Possession, which is a magical spell, is it kind of forces one of your enemy recruits to make a bonus attack or attack again against another random enemy character. So even if that card has already attacked or they're exhausted, it will still force that card to attack one of its friendly characters. The next keyword that we have is everywhere. This is pretty self-explanatory, but it basically means that it affects all cards no matter where they are. So if they're in your hand, in your deck, in your battlefield, and if they're created later on, if they're like summoned onto the board. So the example we have here is Kilowog. He reads deploy. You may pay 1 bronze resource to give your Green Lantern recruits everywhere +1/+1. So for the rest of the game, if they come from your hand, if they get summoned onto the battlefield, even the cards in your deck, no matter where they are, all of your Green Lanterns will have +1/+1. So super cool effect on Kilowog there. The next keyword that we have here is sacrifice. Sacrifice reads KO a friendly character even if they are invincible. So here we have Bane's Venom as the example, which reads give a friendly recruit +4/+4 and start sacrifice this. Any of you Hearthstone fans will recognize that this is very similar to a card that is called Power Overwhelming. The next keyword I want to talk about is summon. So summon reads create and deploy the specified card in a random open space. Very self-explanatory, but the fact that it actually activates the deployability on a card, if it does have one, is also extremely important. But then also it's important to know that it is a random open space. So very much like Hela in Marvel Snap, she just summons things in random places. No matter what card reads summon within DC Dual Force, unless there's only one space available, it will just summon them in random slots on the board. So now I want to jump into deck building and leader selection, guys. So when you first hop into DC Dual Force, you'll notice that there are 5 factions within the game. There's a Might faction, there's a Tyranny faction, there's an Anarchy faction, there's an Energy faction, and there's also a Tactics faction. So you get to use 2 leaders within your deck. You can either choose one from 2 different factions, or you can choose 2 leaders from the same faction. That would be kind of like a mono deck build. So like, for example, I'm super excited to play a mono Tyranny deck with both Poison Ivy and Lex Luthor because they are both Tyranny leaders. But then I could also play Poison Ivy and Batman because then that would be a Tyranny leader, and then that would also be a Tactics leader. In terms of how many cards you can then put into your deck, say for example, if I did choose the Tyranny leader and the Tactics leader, I have to put 20 Tyranny cards into my deck and then 20 Tactics cards into my deck. This has to be the even split of 20-20. It can't be like 18 Tyranny, 22 Tactics. It has to be the even 20-20 split. So now I'm going to move on to the rarity of cards, guys. There are 4 different rarities of cards within DC Dual Force. The first one that you have is the kind of gray gem. That's a common card. You can have up to 2 copies of this within your deck. The next one is the blue gem. This is known as a rare card. You can also have up to 2 copies of this within your deck. The next one that we have is the purple gem. This is known as a super rare card, and you can also have up to 2 copies of this within your deck. And then finally, we have like the gold gem. This is known as an ultimate card. This is a super powerful card. You can only have up to 1 copy of an ultimate card per deck. Now that's just of that one ultimate card. You can have multiple ultimate cards, but you can't put, say, for example, 2 Supermans in your deck, or 2 Riddlers in your deck, if that makes sense. Just to reiterate, guys, you must defeat all opposing leaders in order to win a game of DC Dual Force, no matter how many leaders there are on your opponent's side of the board. So there are some cards within DC Dual Force that allow you to summon more leaders, more than just your 2 starting leaders, such as Heart of Darkness, which summons a new leader known as Eclipso. There's also the other card, Unexpected Help, which summons you a new leader if you only have 1 leader remaining. So there's super cool things like that. Maybe there's a deck where you can like fill the board with like 4 or 5 different leaders. That sounds a bit crazy, but again, just to reiterate, you have to defeat all opposing leaders to win a game of Dual Force. In terms of the maximum hand size within DC Dual Force, this is 10. You cannot hold more than 10 cards within your hand in this game. If you try and draw a card with 10 cards in hand, that card is just simply destroyed. And there is a rule in this game as well that if you draw from an empty deck, you do lose the game. I know that sounds a bit bizarre, a bit crazy, but this is a 40 card deck. So you rarely get to that stage. But essentially, if you run out of cards, you try draw from an empty deck, you straight up lose the game. So I think that's kind of like their fatigue kind of turn timer type of thing. There is no limit to how many turns there are within DC Dual Force, but if you eventually get to that stage, if the game drags on that long, you try to draw a card from an empty deck, you will end up losing the game. So a little bit weird. Curious to see if I'm ever going to get to that stage, but that is a rule within the game. So moving on to charge, guys. This is an extremely important element of DC Dual Force. Each turn, each one of your leaders gains 1 charge. Your charge is not capped. You can keep stacking this up. However, leader abilities may only be used once per leader per turn. So say, for example, Wonder Woman we have here. She has a 2 charge ability, which reads Wonder Woman gains +4 attack this turn. Give your recruits +1 health. So say, for example, you have 4 charge on your Wonder Woman. You can't click that twice in the 1 turn. You can only click it once per turn. So as in, like, you can stack the charges up, but you can't use multiple of them per turn. But yeah, charges are super important within this game because it is like your leader's main ability. So I'm really curious to see what leaders you guys want to pick because of their actual unique ability. I'm super excited to jump in and start deck building and trying out all of the leaders' different abilities. I'm going to move on to replacing cards on the board now, guys. So say, for example, your board is full. You have your 2 leaders and you have 4 recruits. And you're like, oh, I wish I could play, I wish I could replace my small little 1 attack, 1 health recruit with a bigger recruit. What happens then is you can simply replace it on the board. You can just take that card out, replace it with a new card. But that card that you've replaced is not destroyed. It's not KO'd. It doesn't trigger any KO ability. It's just simply removed from play. But you can do that if your board is full. You can't simply say, oh, I want to replace this small card. You just put in your big dude and you'll just like cast the other card to the side. It's not destroyed. It's not KO'd. It's just kind of not even banished, just simply replaced and removed from play. Also, just to note, you cannot replace a leader, guys. You can only replace recruits. If you have a full board and you try to summon a card with a summon effect, that card is just simply destroyed. I think it tries to get summoned and then it gets destroyed again. I'll have to test this while I'm actually playing the game. But as far as I'm aware at the moment, it will be summoned and then it will just be simply destroyed. This is a super interesting interaction within DC Dual Force. So if there's a deploy effect that requires a target to be targeted, but that target isn't available on the board, then the card will try and resolve upon itself. I know that's a little bit confusing, but to give an example and show what I mean, we're going to have a look at Miss Martian here. So Miss Martian reads, deploy, return a friendly recruit to your hand. If she is the only target for that, like if she's the only card that you play on the board, the only recruit that you play, she will use her deploy effect on herself and she'll return herself to your hand, which is a little bit strange. Also, another example here we have here is Mordrew. Mordrew reads, deploy, sacrifice a recruit with 5 or more. And if there's no recruit with 5 or more, if that's the only card there, then he will just, you'll play him and then he'll destroy himself. So bit of a weird interaction there, but definitely something that you guys need to be aware of if you run into these interactions while playing the game. We're going to move on to card generation, guys. So unless stated otherwise, cards that create other cards will be pulling from a global pool of cards. So from cards within all of the other types of factions, all 5 factions. So a card here like Flex Mentalo, which reads, the first time Flex Mentalo's attack increases on your turn, create a bronze action in your hand. This bronze action can be taken from any faction within the game, not just the Might faction, which Flex is from, if that makes sense. The final thing I want to mention is a very niche interaction, but I want to talk about it because it is important. A card here like Black Adam reads, after you deploy a recruit with 5 attack or more, charge Black Adam. And Black Adam's charge ability reads, 10 charge, Black Adam gets +10 attack. Now this is a permanent 10 attack because it doesn't say 10 attack this turn. However, while it's your opponent's turn, your leader always has 0 attack despite any forms of permanent attack that they have. So say as soon as it transfers over to your opponent's turn, Black Adam is not going to be consistently a 10 attack 22 power leader. He's just going to be a 0 attack 22 power leader. But whenever it's your turn, he will permanently have 10 attack, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's all of the information that I could gather together on DC Dual Force for you guys. I hope it helped you in understanding kind of how the game flows, how it functions, the mechanics of the game. Obviously, there's nothing like actually jumping into the game and learning it from the ground up for the very first time. So if you guys want to be on the chance of actually playing DC Dual Force, there will be a closed beta taking place next weekend, and I'm giving away 300 beta codes over on my Twitch channel this weekend, twitch.tv/Kawatech. I will be participating in the streamer beta for the game this weekend, so I hope to see you guys over on Twitch. I'm super excited to play the game, try it out, see your reaction to the game. I'm going to try and build so many different decks. I cannot wait. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you have a fantastic day.